Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Training with Tenten. You're late. Crap. I'm sorry, Tenten. No excuses. Prepare for your punishment. Your training starts now. Tenten summoned a pair of kunai and hurled them at the blonde, who jumped to the side to avoid the kunai. Did I say you could dodge them? Block them all with your Zanbato. I am so ed right now. An hour later, Naruto flopped to the ground, panting. His Zanbato disappeared as he tucked the hilt away. So, it looks like you've finished warming up. Good, we're going to start with the fundamentals. Give me 3,000 strikes in each cardinal and intermediate direction with only your right arm. If you break your form, start back at 0. Make that 5,000. Without another word, Naruto picked up his sword and started on his first of 5,000 vertical slashes. Occasionally, Tenten would spot a flaw in Naruto's stroke and point it out, whereupon Naruto would fix his mistake and reset his swing count. Tenten watched as Naruto continued through the progression, never skipping steps or failing to recount after a missed swing. She was amazed at the speed with which his body was able to adapt to suggestions and corrections to his form. With a start, she realized that his sloppy technique was not due to the inability to learn, but rather the lack of instructors for the blonde as a child. The fact that he even made it through the academy was probably a miracle. It's scary imagining how strong he would be if someone had taken an early interest in him. She was roused from her musings when a sweaty Naruto walked over to her. A sweaty and shirtless Naruto. Hey, Tenten-chan, I finished. What's next? Tenten-chan. Nobody calls me that, so why is Naruto-kun calling me Tenten-chan? Shit, I just called him Naruto-kun, it's not like we really know each other. I'm just helping him so he doesn't get himself killed again. Yeah, that's it. It has nothing to do with those rippling muscles on his arms and the well-toned chest leading to his rock-hard abs, totally unrelated. Tenten, your nose is bleeding. Tenten quickly wiped her nose, turning her head to hide her blush from the grinning Naruto. Shut up. Naruto's stomach growled, catching Tenten's attention and causing Naruto to rub the back of his head in embarrassment. How does lunch sound to you? It'd be my treat, since you're taking your time to help me out. Fine, but we aren't eating ramen. I can't stand that stuff, and everybody knows about your legendary appetite for ramen. But Tenten, ramen is God's gift to man. Kami sneezed, spilling some broth from her cup noodles. Damn you, Naruto. Tenten wasn't amused, but she finally gave in to Naruto's pout. With a shout of glee, Naruto grabbed Tenten's arm and raced off to Ichiraku's, ignoring Tenten's cries to slow the down. Finally, Naruto dragged an exhausted Tenten into the ramen stand and plopped down into one of the stools before heartily calling out for a bowl of miso ramen. Tenten called for barbecue pork ramen, and Naruto raised an eyebrow. Tenten noticed this and scowled. What? Never seen a girl eat a full meal before. Naruto shook his head. Sakura and Ino had always been on diets, and Hinata was always unconscious. As far as Naruto was concerned, girls didn't eat at all. A couple of bowls were placed in front of Naruto and Tenten. Naruto immediately began to inhale his meal, but he watched Tenten out of the corner of his eye. The bun-haired Kunoichi cautiously placed a mouthful of noodles in her mouth and chewed it for a while. After she swallowed her first bite, a small smile formed on her lips. Naruto watched as Tenten started eating faster and faster, smacking her lips eagerly after swallowing a hearty mouthful of noodles. After clacking the bowl on the counter, Tenten looked over at a slack-jawed Naruto. What? Is there something on my face? Naruto shook his head. I'm just a bit surprised that you finished that so quickly. A tick mark developed over Tenten's head. So, you think that because I'm a woman, I can't eat as much as I want? Crap. It's on, Naruto. I challenge you to an eating contest. Whoever eats the most bowls in 40 minutes wins. With that, the pair began to scarf down the ramen, throwing aside all pretenses of decorum. Tsuki and Ayame watched wide-eyed as Naruto was closely matched during the contest. The ramen makers smirked. Naruto and Tenten were perfect for each other, even if they didn't know it themselves yet. When time was called, Tenten put down her 12th bowl with a sigh. She heard Naruto snicker and looked over to see Naruto proudly seated beside a stack of 14 ramen bowls. Ha! I am the master of ramen. Nobody can defeat me. Take that. Tenten merely glanced at Naruto. Although her face remained impassive on the outside, Naruto was able to sense a hidden malice that promised pain during their afternoon training. Well, it's about time we head back, right Naruto? Tenten's tone left no room for argument, so Naruto slowly followed behind Tenten, dreading whatever it was that she had in mind. When Naruto and Tenten returned to the training ground, Tenten stopped Naruto before he could draw out his Zanbato. Now it's time to hone your reflexes. I will be throwing kunai at you, and you will have to dodge them all. We will continue until I say so, no matter if you are conscious or not. She drew a circle in the ground with a katana that had appeared out of nowhere. If you leave the circle, I will start using kunai with exploding tags. Got it. Naruto gulped and nodded. Training with Tenten wasn't very fun. As Naruto continued to dodge projectiles thrown by Tenten, he couldn't stop ogling the weapon's mistress in between barrages. She was a beautiful kunoichi, elegant and dangerous, especially when she was throwing sharp pointy objects with explosive tags attached. Speaking of which, what the hell are you looking at, pervert? Finally, Tenten decided to call it quits, so she began recovering all of her kunai and shuriken scattered around the training grounds. She was surprised to see Naruto helping her to pick up her weapons. Neji and Lee never offered to help me pick up my stuff after training once. Uzumaki. No, Namikaze Naruto, you are truly one of a kind. After Tenten finished sealing her weapons back into her scrolls, she turned to Naruto with a smile on her face. Well, it looks like we're done for today. After you get a good enough feel for your Zanbato, we'll work on your wakizashi. Normally, I'd teach you some Zanbato kata, but they'll become useless when you attach your wakizashi to it. Once you can easily wield both blades, we'll work on creating same kata of your own. Wait, Tenten suppressed a slight blush. Well, someone needs to make sure you're doing things right. It would be a pity if you swung those beautiful swords like a complete idiot. HMPH. I'll master both swords in a week. Tenten snorted. Naruto, it takes years to master just one sword. You really think you can master 2 swords in a week? Tell you what, if you can impress me with your swordsmanship in 2 weeks, I'll go out on a date with you. If you can't, you have to be my servant for a week. I'll still train with you, so you don't have to worry about that. Deal. With that, Tenten turned to walk back to her apartment and saw Naruto walking by her side. WWW, what are you doing? I'm walking you home, of course. I'd feel bad if something happened to you on the way. The pair walked in silence all the way to Tenten's apartment. When they reached the apartment, Tenten turned around. Same time, same place tomorrow. Sure. The following day, Tenten arrived at the training field to see Naruto already swinging his Zanbato around. After just 1 day of supervised training, Naruto's form had already dramatically improved. She tiptoed behind Naruto, hoping to catch him off guard, but was surprised to come face to face with the sharp end of his Zanbato. Sorry about that, Tenten, didn't see you there. Don't worry about it. So, are you ready for some more training? Naruto nodded eagerly, and Tenten unsealed a katana from her weapons scroll. We're going to spar then. Don't let your guard down. Tenten leapt towards Naruto and the two commenced a deadly swords dance. At first, Tenten was able to deftly weave in and out of Naruto's guard to slap the blonde around a bit. However, as the spar went on, Naruto seemed to adjust to Tenten's pace, tightening his guard and pushing Tenten backwards. He learns so quickly. Each time I try something new, he finds a way to counter it the next time. Tenten jumped over a low slash and cut toward his face with a horizontal slash. Naruto bent over backwards, surprising her. With a loud thud, he slammed the hilt of his Zanbato into Tenten's stomach, leaving her gasping for breath. So, what do you think? Pretty good, huh? You've improved, Naruto. Take out your wakizashi and I'll start teaching you how to use it. Naruto's stomach rumbled angrily, and Tenten giggled while Naruto blushed in embarrassment. How does lunch sound? Sure, but I get to pick the place this time. Naruto allowed himself to be taken to a popular sushi restaurant, praying that Tenten would exercise restraint during the meal. He saw Tenten eagerly wiping some drool from the corner of her mouth in eager anticipation of the meal impaled. When they arrived at the restaurant, Tenten was somewhat dismayed to see that the restaurant was completely full. Hey, Tenten, why don't we just go eat ramen instead? Quote, it'll take too long, and I'm hungry. Quote, Tenten, Namikaze Naruto, we are eating at this restaurant whether you want to or not. Tenten's shout attracted the attention of those in the immediate vicinity. Whispers sprang up throughout the restaurant. Did she just say Naruto? The Namikaze Naruto. If he's eating here, I don't want to. Let's leave. He's kinda cute. I wonder if I should ask him out on a date. Why is he here? He looks just like his father. HMPH, I refuse to eat in the same place as the brat. Who's that girl he's with? It's kind of scary. HMPH, that better leave the brat if she knows what's good for. The last man's sentence was cut short when Naruto's fist closed around his throat, constricting the man's windpipe. Don't ever call Tenten that, you little piece of shit. The man spat at Naruto. Only a would want to be with trash like you. You may have people here fooled, but I know what you're thinking. You're just waiting for the right time. Take your little whore and leave Konoha. Quote. With his hands still clenched around the man's throat, Naruto raised the man to eye level and stared deep into the man's eyes. The man gasped as he peered into Naruto's eyes. Visions of a wretched childhood flashed through the man's mind. Overwhelming loneliness and sadness flooded the man, who went limp in Naruto's grasp. Naruto let go of the man's throat, allowing the villager to slide to the floor. Naruto bared his teeth and snarled. I don't care what you say about me, but if you threaten one of my precious people, you will pay. Naruto turned to Tenten with a small smile on his face. Well, it looks like a few spots have opened up. Shall we? Naruto led Tenten to an open booth, where they were immediately attended to by a waiter. After hastily placing their orders, the two sat across from each other in silence, neither wanting to be the first to speak up. Finally, Tenten decided to speak up. Thanks for standing up for me. Haha, no problem. I'm, well, used to it. Did this sort of thing happen a lot back then? Naruto nodded and Tenten fell silent. Konoha really ed this up, ostracizing the shinobi with the most potential over something out of his control. Naruto, I'm sorry. Naruto his head. I ignored and looked down on you during our academy years. Even during the Chunin exams, both during the preliminaries and the finals, I never thought that you stood a chance, but you proved me wrong both times. I thought of you as a dead last, but instead, you're proved to be better than all of us. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you back then as a friend. A glint momentarily appeared in Naruto's eyes as Tenten hung her head in shame. She was surprised when she felt Naruto's hand under her chin, gently lifting her head back up. Tenten, what happened in the past is over. Why don't we put all of this behind us? So what do you say, friends? Tenten took the proffered hand. Naruto, thank you. By then, their sushi had arrived, so the pair dug in relish. The meal passed by, in silence until Tenten swallowed her bite and asked a question that had been bothering her for a while. Hey Naruto, can I ask you a question? You just did, but since I'm feeling nice, you can ask another one. Naruto flashed a toothy grin while Tenten resisted the urge to smack the blonde upside the head. HMPH. Anyways, I was just wondering. Where did you get those swords? Naruto smiled, and a mysterious light twinkled in his eyes. Kami and Yami made them for me. Tenten was inclined to call him a liar right then and there, but she realized that she was talking to someone who had died and was resurrected. What's to say that a little divine intervention hadn't played a role? Well, that's sort of hard to believe. You aren't pulling my leg, are you? Instead of responding, Naruto simply leaned his head back with his arm folded behind his head. As they continued their meal, Tenten became more and more aware of the stares that they were receiving, mostly jealous glares from the females in the restaurant. Tenten had never spent much time following the latest fashion trends that some of the other village girls in Kunoichi obsessed over. Her intense training made dieting unnecessary. Her clothing was modeled after pictures of her mother that she had. Apart from basic soap and shampoo, she didn't spend much time on skin and hair care, but she liked her hair, and her skin was soft and silky. Indeed, her only concession to her vanity was the medical jutsu she used on her hands to keep them soft and supple after a day of hard training. Still, it stroked her vanity to see the other girls jealous of her date. Date? This isn't a date. We're just eating lunch together as friends. I don't know what's gotten their panties in a bunch. Still, going on a date with Naruto wouldn't be that bad, and I promised I'd take him on a date if he's impressive enough with his swords, and with the way he's improving, he just might do it. Tenten flushed bright red at the thought of dating Naruto. Naruto noticed this and was immediately lost in his thoughts. She's really cute when she blushes like that. Wonder what she's thinking about, maybe me. Ha, as if. Still, it would be nice to get to know her better. Naruto decided to mess with Tenten a bit. Placing a hand on her forehead, he leaned forward and peered into Tenten's eyes. What's wrong? Are you sick? Tenten felt the killing intent leaking from the girls in the vicinity before giving an eep of surprise and pushing Naruto back into his seat. WWW, what are you doing? Don't scare me like that. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and chuckled in a placating manner. Ah, sorry about that, Tenten. Tenten regained her composure quickly and glared at the blonde, who gulped. Whenever Tenten looked at him like that, it meant that a painful training session would be coming up. I'm full, Naruto. Why don't you pay the bill, and then we'll go back to the training field and train for a bit? Naruto, who had stood toe-to-toe with the Kyuubi no Yuko, nodded and went to call for the bill. Tenten was not an opponent to be messed with. When they returned to the training field, Tenten told Naruto to pull out his wakizashi. After he complied, Tenten put Naruto through the paces, having Naruto practicing cuts and slashes with the wakizashi in his left hand. Once again, Tenten was amazed at the ease with which Naruto seemed to absorb her teachings. Indeed, working with the Zanbato seemed to help develop an innate sense for swordsmanship. Soon, he was deftly wielding the wakizashi, cutting through the air with crisp strikes. Tenten clapped her hands to get his attention. Okay, looks good. Now, try using both swords in tandem. Naruto nodded and took out the Zanbato hilt. Once the blade phased into existence, a black and white chain burst from both hilts. The chains linked together, effectively connecting the two swords. Tenten watched the weapons with stars in her eyes, a bit jealous that Naruto would be able to use such a marvelous weapon. Naruto began leaping about, swinging the Zanbato in wide arcs while using the wakizashi to take quick slices in the air. The dark and light blurs seemed to fuse together as Naruto continued to practice with his swords. Not bad, this feels a lot smoother than it did during my fight with Hiashi. Tenten's really done a great job teaching me. She really does have a nice side underneath her scary exterior. Naruto's lapse in concentration resulted in the chain tangling his feet, causing him to trip and fall on his face. Tenten snickered while Naruto glared at the weapon's mistress. HMPH. What's so funny? Huh. Oh man, that was so funny. You were doing fine, but then you suddenly zoned out. You didn't notice the chain and you tripped over your own weapon. Haha, that's one way to incapacitate your enemy. Naruto scowled, and Tenten teasingly stuck her tongue out. Yush. Tenten, It is time for us to light our flames of youth. Fuzzy brows. Lee, what the hell are you doing here? Ah, my youthful teammate. Our most youthful Hokage has given us a mission so that we may test our flames of youth. Guy-sensei has asked me to find you while he goes to find our unyouthful teammate. Tenten sighed. Why couldn't her teammate be more normal? She turned to Naruto. Well, it looks like we have to cut this training session short. When I get back, you better have improved, understand? Naruto grinned and pumped a fist in the air. Of course I will. Just be ready to be amazed. Sure. Anyways, I'm going to head off now, so I'll see you later. Yeah, Tenten, what's up? Stay safe, okay. Normally, Tenten would have scoffed and walked away, but there was something in Naruto's voice that made her pause and turn around with a soft smile. You bet, Naruto. With that, Tenten headed off with Lee on their mission while Naruto continued to train with his swords. Over in Otogakure, Orochimaru was finalizing plans to invade Konoha and secure Uchiha Sasuke if possible. After being thwarted a year ago partly due to the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's intervention, Orochimaru was forced to transfer to another body, much to the Sanin's ire. Since then, he had worked tirelessly to assemble a shinobi army powerful enough to invade and crush Konoha. The spies that he had planted in Konoha had returned with valuable data regarding Konoha's forces and defense. With this data, Orochimaru began formulating a plan to completely destroy Konoha. This time, Uzumaki Naruto would not stand in his way. He had heard from his spies that Danzo had executed the Kyuubi brat, so the boy was no longer a concern for Orochimaru. Not that Naruto would have been able to stop Orochimaru anyways. Soon I will burn Konoha to the ground, as well as all of its pathetic inhabitants. Kabuto walked up from behind. Orochimaru-sama, what is the plan of action? Ah, Kabuto, I was thinking that you and I should pay a visit to Konoha to see how it's doing. Just a bit of reconnaissance work, but we might come across some shinobi along the way. Very well, Orochimaru-sama. With that, the snake Sanin and his apprentice took off towards Konoha. The next several days passed by without much incident for Naruto. To his relief, Team 7 was nowhere to be seen, but he was surprisingly disturbed by the lack of Tenten's presence. During the few days that he had spent with the bun-haired Kunoichi, Naruto had developed a certain comfort around Tenten. Now that she was gone, there was something missing during his training sessions, and it wasn't just the constant barrage of kunai or the flurry of katana strikes aimed at his head. Regardless, Naruto was proud of the progress that he had made with his blade work. When Tenten got back from her mission, he was going to charm her pants off. He blinked and blushed. He didn't mean it that way, but the thought was enticing for some reason. Naruto was roused from his musings when a Chunin walked up. Hokage-sama requests your presence immediately. With a sigh, Naruto stashed his swords away and set off to Tsunade's office. 15 minutes later, Naruto was hurtling out of Konoha at top speed. According to Tsunade, Guy and his team had run into some sort of trouble on their way back and requested immediate backup. Since the message was hurried, Tsunade was unsure of the danger and urgency of the situation, so she sent Naruto out to investigate and provide support if necessary. As he ran, Naruto tried to settle the uneasy feeling in his stomach. Something's wrong, I can feel it. The sounds of clashing steel urged Naruto faster, and after bursting through into a clearing, Naruto stumbled onto the scene of the battle. He saw Lee and Neji fighting Kabuto while Orochimaru battled Tenten and Guy. Just as Naruto entered, Orochimaru caught Tenten off guard with a vicious kick to the side. Guy immediately moved to cover his student, but was cut off by Orochimaru, who sank his fist into Guy's stomach. Naruto's loud cry rang through the area. Orochimaru-tem, I'll kill you. Orochimaru turned and stared at the blonde with wide eyes as if he was seeing a ghost before him. Minato-kun. Fights and dates. Something's wrong, I can feel it. The sounds of clashing steel urged Naruto faster, and after bursting through into a clearing, Naruto stumbled onto the scene of the battle. He saw Lee and Neji fighting Kabuto while Orochimaru battled Tenten and Guy. Just as Naruto entered, Orochimaru caught Tenten off guard with a vicious kick to the side. Guy immediately moved to cover his student, but was cut off by Orochimaru, who sank his fist into Guy's stomach. Naruto's loud cry rang through the area. Orochimaru Tem, I'll kill you. Orochimaru turned and stared at the blonde with wide eyes as if he was seeing a ghost before him. Minato-kun. Naruto smirked at the slightly delusional Snake Sanin. Not quite right, Oro-chan. I'm his son, Namikaze Naruto. All of the pieces clicked into place for Orochimaru. I thought you were executed. How are you alive? Naruto ignored him and instead walked over to the unconscious Tenten. After verifying that she was fine, Naruto moved to check Guy's condition. Naruto finally turned to face the irate Sanin and the two locked eyes. Did you just say that you were Minato-kun's son? That's right, Tem. What's that to you? Orochimaru fell silent, remembering the time when he and the other Sanin were to pick apprentices from the academy students. As the leader of the three, Orochimaru had the implicit first pick among the group, and he had picked Mitarashi Anko, undisputed rookie of the year. Tsunade found Shizune, already known for her perfect chakra control. However, everybody was surprised when Jiraiya picked Namikaze Minato, the class clown. Minato wasn't necessarily a failure as a shinobi, but he wasn't considered a prodigy in any sense. Instead, he was often found playing pranks on the village, and according to the rumors, he was a regular peeper at the hot springs, although he had never been caught. Orochimaru had taunted Jiraiya and Minato, claiming that the duo would never accomplish anything, inferior to the other two pairs. However, Orochimaru watched as Minato flourished under Jiraiya's tutelage in amazement. Where did this child, who had not shown any potential as a student, find such strength? It was like watching Jiraiya grow up all over again. Orochimaru had to know. Whenever he tried talking to Minato, the blonde would always stick his tongue out and run away, further infuriating the Snake Sanin. However, his previous latent skill was undeniable, from his impressive chakra capacity to his affinity for creating new seals and jutsu. If only he had chosen differently that day. When Orochimaru received word of Minato's sacrifice, he filed that information to the back of his mind. When he saw Naruto in the Forest of Death all those years later, he never imagined that the blonde who had tried to interfere with his plans to mark Sasuke carried a deeper connection with Minato and the Kyuubi. Standing in front of Minato's son, Orochimaru felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at the blonde. The resemblance was painstakingly obvious now, and Orochimaru was mentally kicking himself for not paying closer attention to the blonde back then. He watched, fascinated as Naruto pulled out two bladeless hilts. His eyes widened when the two blades materialized, and a chain appeared to link the two hilts together. A blade of material chakra. Naruto charged forward, sweeping the Zanbato in a wide circle. Orochimaru stood still, as if in shock, and the blade sliced straight through the Snake Sanin, who dissolved into mud. TCH, mud clone. Naruto whirled around and raised his wakizashi to block Orochimaru's kusanagi. The two shinobi struggled for the advantage, the hard black of Naruto's wakizashi pressing against the cold steel of Orochimaru's kusanagi. Trying to catch Orochimaru off guard, Naruto swung the Zanbato from Orochimaru's blind side. Using his flexible body, Orochimaru slipped around blade and wrapped his neck around Naruto's body. Before Orochimaru could bite Naruto, a chain wrapped around Orochimaru's neck. Naruto quickly slashed his wakizashi across Orochimaru's throat. Naruto wasn't surprised to see Orochimaru once again turn into mud and slop around his feet. Orochimaru chuckled. Well, it seems as you have more skill this time around, Naruto-kun. I must insist that we get serious about this now. With that, the two shinobi rushed forward once more. Nearby, Kabuto was engaged in battle with Neji and Lee. The two sides were at a standstill, neither able to gain the definite upper hand. Whenever Neji or Lee would manage to land a strike, Kabuto would use his inhuman healing to recover. Lee was too agile for Kabuto, and Neji would always counter with the Kaden whenever Kabuto tried to get too close. Hey, you two are pretty good for Genin. What about you? You were a candidate at the Chunin exams. Kukuku, I am actually a spy for Orochimaru-sama. That's all you need to know. How dare you sully the flames of Konoha with your unyouthful behavior? Neji, we must teach this traitor a lesson. Neji nodded, and the two charged forward with renewed vigor and energy. Soon, Kabuto was struggling to simply keep his guard up against the dual onslaught. The two fought with opposite styles, yet they fought in perfect harmony, Lee's hard strikes attempting to pry Kabuto's defense open for a Jiyuken strike from Neji. Kabuto blocked a kick from Lee and skipped back from Neji's palm thrust. TCH, this is harder than I thought it would be. Nevertheless, this is the end. Prepare yourselves, cute little Genin. Kabuto reactivated his chakra scalpels and, to Neji's surprise, rushed straight towards the Byakugan user. What is he thinking? Everybody knows that charging a Byakugan user is suicide. As he activated his Kaden to repel the attack, Neji was surprised to see Kabuto smirk. Before Neji could complete the chakra rotation, Kabuto stuck a chakra scalpel into the absolute defense. What's this? The presence of his chakra is disturbing my own flow of chakra. By sending chakra pulses through that scalpel, he's starting to overload my Kaden. Crap, if this keeps up, I'll lose control. The explosion that resulted blew Neji and Kabuto apart, sending the two flying back. Neji lay still, stunned by the blow, but Kabuto slowly stood up and sneered at the Hyuga prodigy. For what you did to Neji, I will never forgive you. Is that so? What are you going to do about it? Guy-sensei, I'm sorry, but I must do this to protect an important friend. I cannot afford to lose here. I must uphold my Nindo. First gate. Kaimon, Kai. Second gate. Kyumon, Kai. Third gate. Seimon, Kai. Fourth gate. Shoman, Kai. Fifth gate. Toman, Kai. Oh, green spandex can open 5 of the celestial gates now. That wasn't on my Nin info cards. This should be interesting. Let's see what you have, boy. In a blur, Lee shot forward and punched Kabuto in the face. Before Kabuto could recover, Lee was already in position with an upwards kick. Ura Renge. Lee unleashed a flurry of kicks and punches, further sending Kabuto skyward. He finished the devastating combo with a strike from above with an arm and a foot, sending Kabuto crashing to the ground. Panting, Lee landed on the ground. I did it, Guy-sensei. Before Lee passed out from pain and exhaustion, he saw Kabuto slowly stand back up. How is that possible? Kabuto painfully made his way over to Lee and pulled out a kunai. You surprised me with your last move, but it looks as if you can no longer stand up. Before Kabuto could deliver the finishing blow, Orochimaru's raspy voice called out. Kabuto, come here quickly. Kabuto sneered at the fallen green-clad shinobi before rushing off to rejoin Orochimaru. Well, it looks as if you get to live to see another day, brat. Kabuto then rushed off to rejoin his master. As Orochimaru threw jutsu after jutsu, he screamed out in frustration. Why can't I kill you? Orochimaru, no matter how many jutsu you learn, no matter how many battles you may fight, you will never be able to defeat me. Know this, Orochimaru, as long as you continue on this path of chaos and destruction, you will never discover the true meaning of strength. The true meaning of strength, huh? Is this the same nonsense that Jiraiya and Minato-kun have been talking about all this time? It doesn't matter. I'll show this brat his place now. Orochimaru once again coughed up his Kusanagi blade and took up his fighting stance. Across from him, Naruto stood still, silently regarding his opponent. A light breeze rustled through the area as the two shinobi continued to stare at each other. A resounding explosion from the direction of Kabuto, Lee and Neji's battle jarred the two into action. Meanwhile, Tenten had just woken up from the kick that Orochimaru had given her earlier. She blinked as her vision slowly came into focus. Is that Naruto? What is he doing here? Tenten watched as Naruto fought Orochimaru, wielding his two blades deftly. She tried to stand up and help Naruto, but found that her muscles would not respond. Did the bastard hit me with a paralyzing agent? Damn it. At least Guy-sensei looks fine as well. Indeed, the green beast was slumped over against a tree, unable to move, but otherwise okay. Tenten turned her attention back to the fight. She watched as Naruto matched pace with Orochimaru's skilled swordsmanship. While Naruto was still outmatched in terms of technique and skill, Naruto's superior speed and strength over Orochimaru evened the balance between the two fighters. Still, Tenten was amazed at the improvement that Naruto had shown over the time they had not seen each other. His cuts were sharper than ever and smoothly transitioned from one attack to the next. Even when pressed hard by the snake Sannin, Naruto's guard never faltered. Ten. Tenten watched in horror as Orochimaru's tongue, with Kusanagi in its grip, darted towards her and closed her eyes. Frustrated at his lack success against the blonde, Orochimaru decided to resort to his normal underhanded methods. During the entire fight, Orochimaru had seen Naruto throwing sidelong glances towards the fallen Kunoichi, showing his clear concern for her condition. Every time Orochimaru angled the fight towards her, Naruto would position himself in counter so as to redirect the flow of battle away from Tenten. Let's see how far this hidden strength of yours will take you. With that, Orochimaru pushed Naruto aside and aimed to attack Tenten instead. Drip, drip, drip. Tenten felt something wet and warm dripping onto her cheek and opened her eyes to see a panting Naruto hunched over her, blood dribbling out of his mouth. That was when she noticed the Kusanagi blade protruding from Naruto's stomach. Naruto, you. Naruto coughed, spraying blood on the front of Tenten's shirt. Tenten, you're safe, I was worried for a moment. Tenten looked into Naruto's eyes and gasped. He pulled the sword out of his body and stood up once more, facing the snake Sannin. What happened to your super healing? Does that mean that you no longer contain the Kyuubi? Shut the hell up, bastard. Oh, and how are going to make me with that injury? You can barely stand on your feet, and yet you think that you can beat me. It's not complete yet, but nevertheless, I must try it. Naruto sheathed his Zanbato and raised the sable wakizashi straight in the air. He traced a full circle in the air before pointing the tip at Orochimaru. After taking a deep breath, Naruto swung the wakizashi in a slow arc, which Orochimaru easily blocked. To his surprise, Naruto smirked. Demon technique. Shadow blade. Orochimaru gurgled in surprise as a second blade materialized through his chest. Naruto stumbled back, clutching at his chest. Desperately, the snake Sannin called out for his henchman. Kabuto, come here quickly. A ragged Kabuto instantly appeared at Orochimaru's side. After a start of surprise upon seeing Naruto, he turned to Orochimaru. What is it, my lord? Take me back. We need to change our plans, and I need you to heal me. As you wish, Orochimaru-sama. With that, Kabuto and Orochimaru left the field, leaving the Konoha nin alone once more. Almost immediately, Naruto collapsed to the ground, unconscious. The next several minutes passed excruciatingly for Tenten as she struggled to regain her motor functions. Finally, she was able to slowly make her way to Naruto, where she checked his vitals. Guy crawled over to her side. Is he all right? Tenten nodded and began applying a basic medical jutsu. You keep working on Naruto, and I'll go get Lee and Neji. Minutes later, Guy brought back an unconscious Lee and Neji and gently laid the two on the ground. Well, my youthful teammate, we must hurry and get these three back to Konoha for treatment. Tenten nodded, deciding to ignore the rambling of her sensei. Well, I'll take Neji and Naruto, while you take Lee. Tenten snarled and hoisted Naruto over her shoulders. Guy shed manly tears. Ah, it seems as if our youthful blossom has discovered her flames of youth. Continue forth, my dear pupil. Guy-sensei shall support you the whole way. Tenten remembered that she was carrying a critically injured shinobi on her shoulders, so she decided to not to attack her sensei. Instead, she shifted Naruto into a more comfortable position before heading off to Konoha. As they made their way back, Tenten couldn't stop thinking about the look in Naruto's eyes when he had saved her. In his eyes, she saw a deep fear, the fear of losing a comrade, a companion, a friend. In that brief glance, Tenten saw the loneliness of the blonde's life and the desperation with which he fought to forge and strengthen the bonds with his friends. You truly were alone back then, Naruto, but I swear that things will be different this time. Naruto shifted on Tenten's shoulders, rousing the weapon's mistress from her musings. Gotta protect Ten-chan. His voice barely came out as a whisper, but Tenten heard them clearly. She flushed bright red and was about to drop the blonde to yell at him for embarrassing her when she felt Naruto burrow deeper into her neck, obviously still unconscious. So even when he's unconscious, he's thinking of others. I guess I'll let him get away with it this time. Guy looked over and saw Tenten's flushed face. Tenten, are you feeling sick? Are your flames of youth starting to die down? Yosh, let us pick up our pace. If I cannot make it back to Konoha in 5 minutes, I shall. Sensei, shut the hell up. Naruto woke with a start and looked around. Everything was white. Damn, that meant that he was in the hospital. Sure enough, Tsunade was instantly at his side, running a diagnostic jutsu. Hey there, Bachan. A tick mark grew over Tsunade's head. Brat, I worry about you from the moment you get back, and you call me old. I'm going to kick your as soon as you get out of here. Bring it, you old hag. The two blondes stared each other down for a full minute, until Tsunade leaned forward and enveloped Naruto in a big hug. Don't ever scare me like that again, Naruto. When I saw you come back with that wound in your stomach, I was afraid that I had lost you again. Naruto patted Tsunade's back comfortingly. Whoa, I didn't know you were into older women, Naruto. And Tsunade, are you trying to rob the cradle? Tsunade flushed a slight shade of crimson before sending Jiraiya flying to Suna with a chakra-enhanced punch. Naruto chuckled slightly. Man, I missed seeing that. Where has the stupid pervert been all this time? Naruto, Jiraiya has been unstable ever since that day. I think he blames himself for not taking you in when you were a child. Seeing you again probably brought back the old Jiraiya a bit, so I sort of acted on impulse. Promise me that when you see him you'll talk to him, okay? Naruto nodded, and Tsunade stood up once more. Well, it looks like you're doing just fine in recovery. I guess not having Kyuubi anymore means that you have to spend time in the hospital just like the rest of us. Naruto stared blankly at Tsunade, who immediately tried to correct herself. I didn't mean it that way, Naruto. The former Jinchuriki slowly nodded and Tsunade breathed a sigh of relief. Anyways, now that you're awake, I think there are a few people who want to see you. The door slid open, and a throng of people rushed into the room. Yosh, it appears as if our youthful savior has rekindled his flames. Yes, he has, Lee. Tenten brained the two with a nearby bedpan. Neji bowed down to Naruto. Thank you for your assistance, Naruto-sama. If there is any way to return the favor, please let me know. I bet you kicked that bastard's ass, right Akamaru? Arf, tch, troublesome. Hey, Naruto, wanna go get ramen later? Oi, you two stupid idiots. We're in a hospital with a patient and this is how you act. Show some more respect around here. Everyone else in the room sweat dropped at the irony and Ino looked away in embarrassment. Eventually, Tsunade started to usher the visitors out of the room one by one. While that was happening, Hinata slowly approached Naruto. Naruto-kun. Yes, Hinata. Hinata looked down at the floor, fidgeting slightly. Naruto-kun, I just wanted to say that I'm sorry and that you were right. Can we be friends again? Hinata-chan, it may take time for you to forgive me, Naruto-kun, but please give me another chance. She slowly turned around and headed towards the door. Hinata-chan, I forgave you before it ever happened. With tears streaming from her lavender eyes, Hinata walked out of the room and back to the Hyuga compound. With a sigh, Naruto leaned back in the bed and closed his eyes. The next day, Naruto woke up in the hospital. Judging from the amount of sunlight streaming in through the window, it seemed to be around noon. He looked at the nightstand, upon which a small piece of folded paper rested. He opened the piece of paper and began to read its contents. Naruto, meet me at the training field as soon as you wake up. If I catch you loitering around. Tenten. Naruto rushed off to their usual training ground. He didn't want to find out what Tenten would do to him if he didn't show up right away. 2 minutes later, Naruto was at the training ground, hunched over and panting heavily. Well, it's a good thing you decided to show up, Naruto. Otherwise, I would have made your day painful. Slowly, Naruto caught his breath. So, what are we doing for training today? Tenten flushed red and mumbled something. You say something, Tenten. Tenten clenched her fists and glared at Naruto. I said you won your bet with me, so you're taking me on a date. Alright then, Tenten. How about I pick you up at your house at 4? Tenten nodded and rushed off to prepare for her date. Naruto watched as Tenten ran off with a smile on his face. As soon as Tenten disappeared from sight, a sudden realization hit him. Shit. What do people do on dates? Tenten will kill me if things go wrong. I need someone to teach me the right way to act. Iruka-sensei. Over at the academy, Iruka was grading papers during his lunch break when he felt a chill run up his spine. Something was telling him to run away and hide in a cold dark cave. Challenges. Iruka was at the academy, giving a lecture on the legacy of the Nadaime. Like usual, his students weren't paying much attention to his lectures. He ignored the whispers of his students and continued to list examples of the Nadaime's unparalleled affinity for water. As he continued to write, Iruka's mind wandered over to the topic of Naruto. He hadn't seen Naruto after his fight with Hiashi and the subsequent meeting afterwards, but the latest rumor throughout Konoha was that Naruto had managed to hold off Orochimaru single-handedly. He heard one of his students whisper Naruto's name, so he channeled some chakra to his ears and began to eavesdrop on his class. Did you hear what Naruto did the other day? I heard he saved a kitty from a burning building at 4 in the morning. I heard he did that while fighting off enemy Nin from Iwa. Man, Naruto's so cool. You think he'd go out with me if I asked him? Baka. Why would Naruto go out with a flat-chested whore like you? Why you? Iruka sighed. It seemed as if Naruto's fangirl following was becoming more and more irritating as time went along. As he continued to trace the Nadaime's lineage leading to the Godime, he heard a very familiar voice drift towards him from the window. Hey Iruka-sensei, your classes are still as boring as ever, huh? Iruka turned and saw Naruto climb through the window and into the class with a mischievous grin on his face. Iruka's head started to swell at an alarming rate, causing Naruto to back away nervously. Naruto. The rest of Iruka's lecture was cut off by the squealing of the girls and the shouts of the boys in the classroom. Naruto faced the looks of admiration with an embarrassed grin, and he was immediately bombarded by questions from the class. Ignoring the excited shouts of his students, Iruka walked over to Naruto and whispered into his ear. So, what brings you here? Ah, that's right, Iruka-sensei, I need your help. I'm taking Tenten out on a date tonight. Iruka paled. He didn't like where this conversation was headed. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he tried to remember if he had ever given Naruto the talk, but he couldn't recall any such time. Iruka then decided it was time Naruto learned about the Pharaoh. Still, he figured, he might as well benefit from this by extracting some sort of deal from Naruto. Naruto, I'll teach you all that you need to know as long as you promise me one thing. Promise me that you won't lose your virginity before I do. Virginity? What's that? Oh well, if that's what Iruka-sensei says. I swear it on my Nindo. Naruto punctuated this statement with a wide smile and a thumbs up. Iruka sighed in relief. At least he wouldn't have to worry about the potential of his student getting laid before he did. First, why don't you talk with the class a bit? Class is almost over, but I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. With that, Naruto began addressing the questions from the class. As he spoke to the class, Iruka watched on in pride. His class was totally focused on the blonde shinobi, absorbing all of his words. Did you really bring Tsunade-sama back to Konoha? Haha, so you heard about that. Well, after the Sand Sound invasion, we needed a new Hokage to lead our village, and Tsunade Bachan was the only candidate for the job once Ero Sennin refused. Seeing the confused looks on the students' faces, Naruto chuckled. Ah, I call her Tsunade Bachan because she's old and I call Jiraiya, Ero Sennin because he's a pervert. Anyways, Ero Sennin decided to take me along to find Bachan, and on the way, he began to teach me one of the signature jutsu of my father. Eventually, we found her in a bar. When Ero Sennin offered the title of Hokage, Bachan refused to take the job. I got pissed at her, and we eventually fought. Actually, she kicked my with just one finger. However, we made a bet that day. If I could master the Rasengan within a week, Bachan would take the job and give me her necklace. If not, she would take all my money. Naruto paused to take a breath, allowing his story to sink into the minds of the silent students. 1 week later, Ero Sennin and I found Tsunade fighting Orochimaru Tem and his henchman Kabuto. This was before Tsunade Bachan had gotten over her fear of blood, so Ero Sennin and Shizune Nichan had to jump in before things got too ugly. In the end, I managed to wound Kabuto with a completed Rasengan to the gut. When Orochimaru tried to kill me, I thought I was done for, but Tsunade Bachan saved my life by taking a sword through the chest. Gasps could be heard throughout the classroom, but Naruto continued on. Tsunade Bachan was able to cast aside her fears and fight for something that was important to her. That's what true strength is. It isn't judged by how many jutsu you know, or by your chakra capacity and control. It's measured by the bonds that you hold with people you hold close to you. When you go out on missions, you'll find out what I mean. He pulled out the Shadaime's necklace and held it up for the class to see. Tsunade had returned it to him while he was unconscious in the hospital, its familiar weight resting on his chest once again. Its presence brought a calming effect, serving as a reminder of the love and trust he shared with Tsunade. This necklace means much more to me than it's worth at a jewelry store. I wear this around my neck, as a reminder of my promise to Tsunade to never give up and to fight for those I hold dear to me. Naruto gently put the necklace back on while the academy students sat in silence, pondering his words. A low growl caught everyone's attention. Fight me. A pale-eyed Hyuga boy stood up and glared at the blonde shinobi, leaking a small amount of killer intent. Those nearby slowly edged away, afraid of retaliation from Naruto. To everyone's surprise, Naruto laughed at the young Hyuga. Oh, and what makes you think that you can take me on? Don't tell me you have a stick up your like Neji did. Do I have to beat that out of you? He disappeared in a blur and reappeared behind the young Hyuga, holding his wakizashi to the trembling student's neck. The Hyuga swallowed and clenched his fists tightly, and his voice came out in a faint whisper that only Naruto could hear. You hurt Hinata Nisama. Naruto slowly withdrew the wakizashi and stared the Hyuga in the eye. What is your name? Hitoshi. Hyuga Hitoshi. Very well. What does Hinata-chan mean to you? Hinata Nisama has been a symbol of hope for the Hyuga. Once she becomes the clan heir, the rift between the main house and the branch house can begin to heal. Her kindness and determination will carry the Hyuga to a renewed prosperity. I see, but how about what she means to you personally? Hinata Nisama was the first person to acknowledge my existence, not as a member of the Hyuga clan, but as Hyuga Hitoshi the person. I would do anything to protect her from anyone who tries to hurt her, that's why I must fight you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. And how exactly are you going to beat me? Hitoshi clenched his fists and trembled in anger. Naruto yanked the Hyuga by the front of his shirt and brought him to eye level. Hitoshi, I like that fighting spirit, use that to protect Hinata-chan. However, I'm not someone who would ever try to hurt Hinata-chan, remember that. Naruto let go of Hitoshi and walked back to the front of the classroom while the Hyuga stared at him. After a moment, a red-faced girl asked the question that had been on the minds of all the Kunoichi hopeful. Do you have a girlfriend? Immediately, the classroom went into an uproar. The girls in the classroom all squealed and bombarded Naruto with requests ranging from dates to marriage and UAL intercourse. Iruka sighed in exasperation. We have to do something about these fangirls. It's funny, back when Naruto was in the academy, he didn't have any fangirls, but now they're all going crazy over him. Before armed warfare could break out, Naruto waved his hands to get attention. Almost instantly, the classroom fell silent. Naruto marveled at the power such a simple action seemed to have over the class. Time to snap them out of their delusions. Ladies, the way you are right now, I promise you that you all would make the worst type of kunoichi. A look of shock passed over all of the girls' faces, but Naruto continued on, heedless of their stunned expressions. The life of a shinobi is not something to be taken so lightly. When you're out on the battlefield, these things don't matter anymore. Fight for those you hold dear to you, but don't allow yourself to be blinded by your feelings. Remember, if you take up the Konoha Hittite and I find out that you betray Konoha for your own petty ambitions, Naruto's eyes glinted dangerously and his voice deepened. I will be the first one to hunt you down. The bell chimed, signaling the end of class. Still, the students were seated at their desks, transfixed. Slowly, Naruto's fierceness seemed to dissipate, to be replaced with his familiar grin. Well, what are you brats waiting for? Go on and get out of here. As the students shuffled out of the academy, Naruto turned to Iruka. Iruka could have sworn that Naruto's smile had a feral quality. Alright, Iruka-sensei. It's time for you to teach me how to date. Iruka gulped. Why don't we head on over to my house, then? When they got there, after setting down 2 cups of tea, Iruka sat down at the kitchen table and looked over at the eager Naruto. So, you and Tenten, huh? When did that happen? Naruto sputtered and waved his hands in the air frantically. It's not like that, Iruka-sensei, seriously. She's been helping me learn some kenjutsu, so I'm taking her out to thank her. We're just going as friends, nothing more. But still, I don't really know what to do. I mean, I've never gone out with a girl before, so I was sort of hoping that you could give me some advice. Shit, does Naruto seriously think that I can teach him anything about dating? It's not like I've been active on the dating scene. Well, Naruto, the first thing to remember is that when you first see her, you must compliment her. It has to be real, because if she finds out that you're lying, she'll get angry at you. Naruto nodded. Getting Tenten angry was definitely one of the last things he wanted to do, right up there with kissing Sasuke or being put in a yaoi novel with Iruka. Also, you have to be able to read her emotions. Women, especially kunoichi, are capable of hiding their emotions, and keeping them happy is an important part of a successful date. Sometimes they'll say that they're happy, even when they want to do nothing other than rip you apart. Iruka-sensei, why are they like that? I mean, if they were angry, why don't they just come out and say it? Naruto, women are the biggest mysteries to us men. Many noble men have spent their whole lives trying to understand women. Jiraiya-sama of the legendary Sannin is an example of this. Ero-sensei is nothing but a pervert. Maybe Jiraiya-sama is not the best example for this, but I assure you that understanding the hearts of women is a challenge that we must all deal with at some point in our lives. Naruto, I wish you good luck. Naruto sighed, wondering just what he had gotten himself into. I can tell you this. There are things that you and Tenten may do when you're out having fun, but may not be appropriate for dates. Iruka noticed Naruto's look of confusion and decided to elaborate. That means no training and no ramen. Naruto's eyes grew wide and Iruka chuckled in amusement. Don't worry about it too much, Naruto. The rewards for doing this will be well worth it. What do you mean, Iruka-sensei? Well, I was talking about the benefits at the end of the date. Benefits. You know, stuff like hugs and kisses, or if you've been with her for a while. Iruka's voice dropped down to a conspiratorial whisper. Naruto was bright red when Iruka brought up hugging and kissing. He had always seen Tenten as very attractive, but he had never once thought of her that way. He pushed aside rather impure thoughts and asked a question that the rest of Iruka's words sparked. What's? Iruka nearly fainted. Crap, I forgot that I'd probably have to give him the talk. Still, it's kind of awkward, talking to Naruto about this. Now I know how Dad felt when he had to do this. Still, I guess I have to teach him. Just as Iruka was about to explain, he was struck by divine inspiration. He'd just relegate the task to someone more qualified to teach Naruto. Well, Naruto, I'm probably not the best person to ask. Why don't you go ask Tsunade-sama? As Naruto flew out the door in the direction of the Hokage Tower, Iruka called out after him. Don't forget our promise, Naruto. Tsunade was having a wonderful day in her office. She had finished all of the paperwork, the council was quiet, and she was enjoying a warm bottle of sake with Shizune. Nothing could go wrong. Nothing. Shizune, isn't this great? We're finally done with our work. Nothing can bother us. Tsunade ba-achan. Damn, what does the brat want this time? Teach me about. Tsunade spat out the sake she was sipping and stared at the blonde. She wasn't quite sure she heard him properly. Excuse me. Well, Iruka-sensei said he couldn't teach me about, so I decided to come and ask you about it. Shizune flushed a dark shade of red as she thought of the copy of the dolphin and the fox on her nightstand, while Tsunade wore a pensive look on her face. Of course, nobody has ever taught Naruto about girls, and given his natural naivete, it isn't surprising for Naruto to not know about, even if he was the inventor of the Oryoku no Jutsu. She smirked, sending a slight chill down Naruto's spine. So, our little Naru-chan is ready to grow up now. Why don't you let Shizune and me teach you all you need to know? Naruto swallowed nervously as Tsunade started to lecture. Meanwhile, Tenten was busy rummaging through her closet looking for clothes to wear. Since she had never associated with many of her female counterparts at the academy, instead choosing to focus on her kunoichi training, she had never put much thought or effort into her looks. She wore clothing that fit nicely and didn't interfere with her mobility, and she supposed that her training regimen kept her fit and trim. That's why she was in a mild state of panic when she realized that she had no clue as to what she should wear. With a sigh, she swallowed her pride and headed out of her apartment and in the direction of the Yamanaka flower shop. When she got there, she found Ino casually seated at the counter with both legs propped up, skimming through the pages of the most recent issue of the Kunoichi Monthly. As soon as Tenten entered the shop, Ino looked up expectantly. Welcome to the Yama. Hey there, Tenten. What brings you here? You buying flowers for Neji again? Tenten balled her fists, but maintained her composure outwardly. She probably wouldn't be able to get Ino's help by throwing kunai at her face. When the hell will she ever let that go? That was ages ago, when I found out that Neji and I were going to be on the same team. I haven't ever thought about that owl sponge that way ever since. Actually, Ino, I was hoping that you could help me out a bit. You see, I'm going to be going out later today, and I have no clue what to wear or what to do. Ino smiled deviously. Ah, so the icy cold weapons mistress is finally going out on a date. Who's the lucky guy? It can't be Neji. Oh god, it's Lee, isn't it? Actually, I've heard that you've been spending lots of time with Naruto recently. It's him, isn't it? Tenten hoped that Ino didn't pick up the slight flush that lit up her cheeks. You know what? Maybe I'll go ask Sakura instead. Tenten's words worked like a charm. Almost instantly, Ino was out of the flower shop, dragging Tenten behind. Alright Tenten, we're going on a beauty run right now. Just leave it to me. Tenten watched in amazement as Ino stormed throughout Konoha, shopping for clothes and accessories, getting her hair and nails fixed up, all things that she had never dreamed of doing as a kunoichi. Part of her was wondering exactly why she was going through all this, all for the sake of a simple date with Naruto. She held up a bra that Ino had thrust into her arms and glared at the lace. Did she really need to purchase new lingerie for this date? It's not as if Naruto would be seeing any of that stuff. She blushed as she imagined exactly how Naruto would be seeing her in her underwear. Not likely. Ino looked over in concern. Maybe her shopping companion was starting to lose her mind. Tenten just didn't seem the type to understand the wonderful subtleties of searching for the right top, or finding a pair of cute shoes on sale. She quickly steered Tenten to the next store. It wasn't every day that Ino got to oversee a complete makeover of a fellow kunoichi, so she was going to make the most of the moment. Hopefully she would be able to worm a few details of Tenten's mystery date along the way. In another shopping district, Naruto stumbled out of the department store clutching an armful of bags. After Tsunade and a blushing Shizune finished explaining UAL intercourse to Naruto, they had asked him what had brought up the conversation in the first place. When Tsunade found out about Naruto's date with Tenten, she had grabbed Naruto and Shizune and literally carried them out of the office. While they were picking out clothes for Naruto, Tsunade and Shizune peppered the bewildered blonde with random tidbits of dating advice. Naruto didn't quite understand much of what they were saying, so he just nodded and feigned comprehension. In actuality, Naruto was still trying to digest the earlier education he had received from Tsunade. He supposed that the worst part was when Tsunade had tried to coerce Shizune into disrobing and serving as a nude model for Tsunade's lesson on the female anatomy. In the end, Tsunade had called in Mitarashi Anko, who had jumped out of her fishnet before Tsunade got halfway through her request. He'd never see Tenten the same way again. The glare of the sun overhead jerked Naruto out of his thoughts, informing him that they had left the shop. He looked down at the large bundle of bags in shock. He didn't realize that Tsunade had gotten so much clothing. What the hell is up with this, Bachan? You said you were getting me clothing for my date, not for the rest of my life. Tsunade whacked Naruto upside the head twice. The first one was for calling me old. The second hit was for being an idiot. Naruto, I'll be honest, your sense of clothing has always been hideous. When you get home, before you head out on your date, I want you to replace your old clothing with these new ones. You can send your old clothing to me. With a sigh, Naruto nodded and headed back towards his home. Tsunade watched the blonde walk off with dollar signs shining in her eyes. I wonder how much Naruto's boxers will sell for at the Naruto Superstore. Back at Tenten's apartment, it was 5 minutes till 4 and Tenten was pacing the floor. Ino had assured her that her date would be floored by her transformation, but Tenten still had her reservations. She anxiously pulled at her hair. The hairdresser had pulled her hair out of her buns and had arranged her hair in a way that Tenten thought was impossible. Still, she had to admit that it looked really hot. Each curl and lock of hair was delicately put in place, accentuating her brown eyes nicely. The clothing that Ino had picked out for her fit nicely as well. It was similar to her regular outfit, but after Ino's modifications, she could only describe her new outfit as downright Y. Ino had purposely picked a smaller size, so both the top and her pants hugged tightly to her figure, accentuating all of her curves. There was a slit cut in the back, exposing some of her creamy white skin for all to see. She twirled around in front of a mirror, giggling slightly before flushing red. What the hell is wrong with me? She glanced over at her clock, almost willing the minute hand to move faster. 4 minutes. I wonder what Naruto-kun will think of how I look. 3 minutes. Naruto-kun, what the hell am I, an Academy fangirl? 2 minutes. Knock, knock. Naruto's early arrival caught Tenten off guard. She stumbled over to the door and wrenched it open. Smooth. Her breath hitched in her throat as she stared at the blonde Adonis standing across from her. Likewise, Naruto was openly gaping at the goddess in front of him. Wow. Tenten raised an eyebrow and Naruto hastily tried to correct himself. I mean, you look really nice today. Not that you don't usually look nice. It's just that today you look even better than normal. Naruto's voice trailed off awkwardly. Well, you look good too, Naruto. At this small compliment, Naruto seemed to regain some of his famous swagger. Holding his arm out for Tenten, he led her out into the streets. As they walked through Konoha, Tenten noticed the jealous looks that many of the other girls were throwing her way. She pressed herself tighter to Naruto's arm and smirked slightly. That's right, girls, and he's all mine. Naruto seemed to sense the killing intent radiating from Tenten because he turned to her with look of concerned confusion. Tenten simply smiled and waved it off. Nothing could possibly go wrong. How incorrect she was. It wasn't that Naruto was a bad date. Indeed, Naruto had been a gentleman throughout the entire ordeal, maintaining a respectable mannerism, albeit a bit roughly. It seemed as if Cammy was humoring herself by messing with the date. When they arrived at the movie theater, they were dismayed to find the building burned down to ashes. Naruto chalked it up to pure coincidence that the Uchiha compound was just across the street. Next, they decided to go to the Konoha Park to walk around, but the Inazaka dogs were all in heat and running all over the place. After aimlessly wandering around and making some small chat, they arrived at a popular sushi restaurant, where Naruto had surprisingly managed to work out a reservation. Before they could step inside, the building exploded in chaos, and after a minute, the entire restaurant was left in shambles. Tenten could have sworn she spotted her youthful teammate stumbling away, cradling a bottle of sake. By then, Naruto seemed visibly disappointed in the lack of success, so Tenten decided to take pity on the blonde. Why don't we go over to Ichiraku's then? In a flash, Tenten found herself seated on the barstool, happily slurping the warm noodles. Her hair had fallen out of its styling on the way to Ichiraku's, and her clothes were somewhat ruffled, but Tenten didn't care. That's right, we don't need to have the perfect princess date. Being with Naruto like this, acting normal, is so much better than trying too hard to make things just right. She continued to listen to Naruto describe his fight with Orochimaru, occasionally throwing in a jab at some of the more obviously exaggerated points in the story when she felt two chakra signatures coming up behind them. She whirled around and saw Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura walking towards them. Naruto's mind was a mess during the entire date. When he first showed up at Tenten's door, he was shocked at how beautiful she looked, standing there in her form-fitting pink top and dark pants. It wasn't until she turned her back to him to lock the door that he noticed the slit cut in the back, exposing a healthy portion of her backside to his view. His lessons with Tsunade and Shizune rushed back into his mind, and he had to try his hardest not to give into his newfound perversion. Then, as the date progressed and the situation became worse and worse, Naruto couldn't help but cast nervous glances in Tenten's directions. Surely she was upset, which would mean that Naruto would be in for a world of pain shortly. When she instead offered to eat at Ichiraku's, Naruto was so relieved that he practically flew over to the ramen stand, eager for some touch of familiarity. Indeed, the warm atmosphere of Ichiraku's seemed to diffuse the tension between the two, and soon they were laughing and trading stories like usual. When Tenten suddenly turned around, Naruto followed her gaze and soon made eye contact with Sasuke and Sakura. Fight me. Naruto put a palm to his forehead. I'm eating with my friend here, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave us in peace. Damn it, Dobi, you tricked me with that cheap jutsu of yours. I can't accept that. Fight me now. Naruto ignored his former teammate and called for a fourth bowl of ramen. Sasuke's irritation seemed to grow with each passing second. Finally, Tsuki slammed down a new bowl of ramen, but before Naruto could dig in once more, Sasuke darted forth and snatched the bowl away. I said, fight me, now. He punctuated the statement by flinging the bowl on the ground, where it shattered, spilling its contents on the ground. Naruto didn't even flinch, but his voice came out as a low growl. I'll see you at the training grounds in 10 minutes. Sasuke smirked and stalked away while Sakura followed meekly behind, casting furtive glances back at Naruto. PFT Dobi. Naruto turned back to Tenten, who seemed to be trembling slightly. Tenten, you alright? Naruto. Yay. Kick his ass, alright. Naruto grinned and walked off with Tenten over to the training grounds. Nearby, a lone blonde kunoichi stepped out of the shadows with her eyes glinting dangerously. Now this is some juicy gossip. I bet everyone will come running if they find out that Naruto-kun and Sasuke-kun are about to have a fight. Now, to spread the rumors to the rest of the shinobi. Reunion. After running back home to change clothes, Naruto walked with Tenten to go face Sasuke. When Naruto and Tenten arrived at the training ground, they were surprised to see that the field was buzzing with excitement and packed with shinobi. Ino ran up to the pair, rubbing the back of her head in slight embarrassment. Yo, you two. Tenten narrowed her eyes at the bubbly blonde. What did you do this time? Are you responsible for this crowd? Ino pouted. Geez Tenten, how can you accuse me of such a thing? I might have told a couple of my friends, who might have told a few of their friends. I didn't expect that the news would spread so quickly. HMPH, well I guess this means that there will more people around to watch Naruto beat the shit out of Sasuke. As Naruto walked towards the waiting Sasuke, Ino pulled Tenten to the side. Hey Tenten, what do you mean by that? Sasuke's really strong. I know what he did to Naruto and Konoha was wrong, but that doesn't mean that he's weak. Sakura says that all Sasuke does is train all day. I know Naruto managed to beat Hinata's dad, but Sasuke isn't going to go down without a fight. Tenten smirked, causing Ino to stop her rambling and look at Tenten quizzically. Tell you what, Ino. If Sasuke is able to knock Naruto on his back once, I will go shopping with you for a whole day and pay for everything. Ino's eyes widened at this. She could finally get her hands on that new skirt that she had been eyeing for the past few days. She was about to accept Tenten's deal when the weapons mistress cut her off. But, if Sasuke can't do it, then you will become my practice partner for a month. Ino paled at this statement. It was a widespread rumor that Tenten's teammates, Rock Lee and Hyuga Neji, were found hugging each other and crying about their teammates' cruel training session. If the little green beast of Konoha and the strongest inheritor of the Byakugan were scared shitless by Tenten's training regimen, what chance did she have of surviving? Her mind wandered back to the really cute skirt. Surely Sasuke-kun should be able to knock Naruto back once. Deal. The two kunoichi shook hands to solidify the deal and moved to join the other shinobi gathered to watch the battle. Naruto, you better not mess around. If you go easy on him and let him land a hit, I'll make you suffer. Naruto was facing Sasuke, staring his former teammate in the eye. Maybe I should go easy on him for a while to get a feel for his strength. Maybe let him land a few blows. He felt a sudden chill run up his spine, as if something bad was going to happen to him if he didn't take the fight seriously from the beginning. He looked over and saw Tenten giving him a fierce glare and gulped. Maybe he should take this fight seriously from the beginning. Dobi, you managed to catch me off guard last time with your strange jutsu, but I'm prepared for it this time. Quote, HN. Not going to say anything to your old teammate. What happened to the hyperactive loudmouth blonde? Naruto blinked. You say something, Uchiha. Sasuke balled his fists in anger. This was an opportunity for the two of them to test their strengths, and the Dobi was ignoring him, treating him like trash. Nothing. Let's fight. Sasuke drew out a kunai, an action that Naruto reciprocated. There was a silence as the two shinobi faced each other, gauging each other's defenses. A hidden signal passed between the two combatants, and they leapt towards each other simultaneously. Their kunai met with a metallic clang in the middle of the clearing. Sasuke used his free hand to throw a punch at Naruto, who easily ducked underneath the blow. Twisting around at the waist, Sasuke followed up his punch with a swift leg sweep. Naruto kicked Sasuke's leg away and slipped underneath Sasuke's guard and landed a shallow slice across the cheek with his kunai. Sasuke took a step backwards and wiped off the blood from his cheek, wearing a slightly feral grin. It's about time we up the stakes, Hadobi. Sasuke flashed through a series of very familiar hand seals that ended in the tiger seal, finally bringing his right hand up to his mouth. Kaden. Gukaiu no Jutsu. A large fireball erupted from Sasuke's mouth and rushed towards Naruto, burning everything in its path. God damn it. I hate that stupid jutsu. Naruto leapt into the nearby river to take shelter while the inferno passed overhead. As Naruto waited at the bottom of the river, he felt the water start to lift him towards the surface and solidify. When did he learn this jutsu? Naruto quickly jumped out of the water before the Suiro no Jutsu, water prison technique, could take hold. Using a kunai to deflect the brace of shuriken headed his way, Naruto landed back on the ground and raised an eyebrow at Sasuke. You learned some new tricks while I was gone, haven't you, Uchiha? Well, the Sharingan is the cherished bloodline of Konoha, so I've been growing stronger every day through the power of the Sharingan. Soon I'll be strong enough to avenge my family and protect Konoha from future disasters. Naruto jumped over a Fuma shuriken and twisted in the air to avoid a kunai, which stuck into the tree behind him. The acrid smell of burning sulfur wafted through the air, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow. Exploding tag, that's too simple for someone like Sasuke. What's his real plan? Naruto braced himself for the explosion, but the tag simply fizzled out. He sensed wires snaking in his direction and quickly leapt to the side, avoiding the danger. Meanwhile, the spectators were watching the two shinobi battle. Inoichi turned to Shikaku. Say, what do you think of this fight so far? They're pretty evenly matched so far. Sasuke hasn't been able to land a blow, but Naruto hasn't been doing anything so far. I'd say it's too early to say for sure. Did you see Naruto's fight with Hiashi? Inoichi shook his head. I was busy doing work for the wife, but Ino told me how Naruto used some strange technique to catch Hiashi off guard. That's what I heard too. I wonder if he can hold up against the Mangekyo Sharingan. You two are making the same mistake that I made. Inoichi and Shikaku turned to see the normally stoic Hiashi grinning ever so slightly. What do you mean by that, Hiashi-san? It is not something that can be simply described in words. Let me ask you this: have you ever faced Namikaze Minato in a serious fight? The two shinobi nodded. Do you remember feeling a sense of dread when he looked you in the eyes? Hiashi watched Naruto land a kick to Sasuke's stomach as Shikaku and Inoichi nodded in affirmation once more. When I faced Naruto-san, I had a similar feeling. However, when I looked into his eyes, I knew there was something different, something deeper. It was as if his eyes were penetrating the depths of my soul. What do you mean by that? The Hyuga clan is well known for possessing the Byakugan, which has been called the all-seeing eye. One minor ability of the Byakugan is to be able to read the emotions of one's opponent. My nephew, Hyuga Neji, has a natural talent for this. What Naruto-san does, however, is on a whole different level. Hiashi watched as the two combatants paused for a moment. Sasuke's face contorted in pain momentarily before he looked up at Naruto, revealing his Mangekyo Sharingan. Hiashi grinned. I believe Uchiha-san will start to understand what it's like now. Naruto quirked an eyebrow at the Uchiha survivor, who had just activated his completed Sharingan. Finally going all out, Tem. Instead of responding, Sasuke ran towards Naruto, wielding a short katana. Naruto sighed, pulling out a kunai to knock aside the sweeping blade. As Naruto and Sasuke continued to fight, Sasuke's irritation continued to rise. TCH, why can't I hit Naruto? No matter how much faster I move, he always seems to be one step faster. It's as if my Sharingan can't pick him up at all. Sasuke's eyes widened in realization. No way, my Sharingan isn't working against him at all. It looks like I'll have to use it. Sasuke parried a kunai thrown by Naruto and looked his former teammate in the eye with his Sharingan wheels spinning. Tsukuyomi. Gasps went through the crowd as Uchiha Sasuke captured Naruto in the almighty Genjutsu. Tenten clasped her hands in worry. Shit. I didn't think that the bastard would go so far as to use a deadly jutsu in this spar. Naruto-kun, please be alright. To the surprise of the audience, Naruto seemed unaffected by Sasuke's jutsu. Instead, Sasuke was the one who dropped to one knee, clutching his eye and panting heavily. After recovering his composure, Sasuke rose up once more and glared at Naruto. How did you do it? How did you manage to defeat the Tsukuyomi? Naruto answered by sending a flying kick at Sasuke, who barely dodged the attack. The two continued to fight, although Naruto was seen as having the clear advantage. Meanwhile, Ino was, for once, not thinking about shopping and fashion. When the fight started, she prayed with all of her heart for Sasuke to knock Naruto to the ground at least once. She really wanted that skirt, damn it. At first, she thought that it would be an easy bet to win. Even though Sasuke hadn't managed to land a solid hit, the two combatants seemed to be evenly matched in her eyes. As the fight dragged on, Ino started to pay closer attention to the fight itself. Once Naruto managed to throw off the legendary Tsukuyomi without any adverse side effects, Ino totally forgot about her bet with Tenten and was instead focused entirely on the fight. She saw how Naruto always seemed to stay ahead of Sasuke, no matter what traps or jutsu Sasuke seemed to throw his way. Slowly, she started to realize that Naruto was on a totally different level than Sasuke. It wasn't due to a difference in ability, strength, or speed that set the two apart, but Naruto exuded an overwhelming pressure that seemed to make his movements crisper, stronger. Even at a distance, Ino knew that she wouldn't stand a chance in a fight against Naruto. A shrill cry of pain brought Ino back to her senses. Huh, what just happened? Did I lose track of the match? Moments before, Naruto and Sasuke had come to a standstill once more. Naruto, you aren't taking me seriously, are you? Of course I am. Now, do you want to continue to chat, or do you want to finish this fight? Sasuke smirked at Naruto, and for the first time during the fight, there was a bit of doubt in Naruto's mind. Sasuke held out his right arm, palm face up, causing Naruto to narrow his eyes. That doesn't look like the Chidori. No way, it can't be. Naruto froze stiff as a ball of swirling chakra appeared over Sasuke's hand. Rasengan. That's right, it's the technique of the Yondaime Hokage. It wasn't that hard to learn, thanks to the Sharingan. Prepare yourself, Naruto. Naruto stood there, shell-shocked, as Sasuke drew closer with the completed Rasengan. He showed no sign of making any movement to dodge the jutsu. Finally, Tenten's shrill voice cut through Naruto's thoughts. What the hell are you doing, you moron? If you don't move, I'm going to kick you so hard, not even Kami will be able to save you. Too late. Take this, Dobi. Rasen AAA arg. Sasuke clutched his right arm, reduced to a bloody stump, and let out a scream of pain. Naruto flicked his wakizashi, effectively cleaning the blade of blood. The crowd watched in shock as Naruto turned and started to walk away. Tenten noticed Naruto's slightly stiff motions, and the small trembling of his hands. Naruto-kun. She watched fearfully as Kakashi shushined in front of Naruto, in an attempt to block his former student's path. Naruto, I understand that you may not trust us, and you might even hate us, but should you really have done that to Sasuke-kun? You need to learn to control your emotions better. Quote. Are you just going to ignore me like that, Naruto? Even if you don't want to, as your superior, I am permitted to use necessary force if you are being insubordinate. Quote. Just because your father was Minato-sensei, it doesn't mean that. Kakashi's statement was cut short when Naruto stared him in the eye. Hitaki, you have no right to call my father your sensei. Kakashi took an involuntary step backwards when he saw the fierce look in Naruto's eyes, allowing Naruto to walk away unimpeded. The crowd was silent as Naruto walked off into the distance, but once Naruto left the training grounds, the gathered shinobi erupted in conversation. It was during the commotion that Tenten silently slipped away from the rest of the group. Naruto-kun, wait for me. Tenten slowly made her way up the path to the top of the Hokage monument, where she was sure that she could find Naruto, as it was no secret among the Konoha 12 and their Junin sensei that Naruto could often be found at the Hokage monument when he was younger. Through her concern, the irritated part of Tenten's mind decided to make herself be heard. My god, why the hell does Naruto have to pick such a high place to brood? Not everyone has that freakish stamina of his. I mean seriously, here I am looking for him and he's run off to the hardest place to reach in Konoha. She reached the top of the Hokage monument, fully intent on giving Naruto an earful. A fearful wave of tension forced her words back down her throat. She looked towards the source and wasn't surprised to see that Naruto was standing on the Yondaime's head with his head bowed and his hands clenched in fists at his sides. Thinking that Naruto wanted to be left alone, Tenten turned around to head back, but stopped when she heard Naruto call out. Tenten, could you stay here with me for a while? Tenten walked to Naruto's side and stood still. When it appeared as if Naruto wasn't going to say anything, Tenten stretched a hesitant hand towards his arm. Naruto's soft voice broke through the air. Stopped Tenten. Hey Tenten, what does Lee say about hard workers and geniuses? Huh, he's always saying that hard work will always defeat natural genius. What do you think of that mindset? Huh, Tenten, the Rasengan was a jutsu that my father created. It didn't require any special bloodline to learn, only the willpower and the strength of hard work. It took me over a month of constantly practicing that one jutsu before I could even form a passable Rasengan. Ero Sennin might not have been the best teacher, but he was the first person who actually took any interest in my training. But what about Iruka sensei? I know that you two are pretty close friends. Didn't he teach you during your years at the Ninja Academy? Naruto dropped his head a bit and spoke in a low voice. Iruka sensei and I never saw eye to eye while I was at the academy. To me, he was the same as everyone else in Konoha, and I was a reminder of Konoha's tragedy. It wasn't until the day I graduated that we accepted each other as friends and brothers. The day of your graduation. What happened then? Naruto smiled sadly and shook his head at Tenten. I'm sorry, Tenten, but that's a story that I treasure. Maybe one day when I am ready, I will tell you this story. For now, I'm afraid you're going to have to wait until then. Tenten blushed in embarrassment. Why did I have to ask such a personal question? He's probably really upset now. Single quote. Naruto, I'm sorry if that offended you. Naruto managed a slight grin and waved her off. Don't worry about it. Anyways, where was I again? Alright, learning the Rasengan. In a way, the Rasengan can be seen as the pinnacle of hard work, attainable through training and dedication. It makes me so angry that Sasuke used his precious eye to copy the pain and sweat that everybody else must endure. Quote, I don't get it. The Rasengan doesn't require any hand seals. How was he able to use the Sharingan to copy it? I'm not sure, but I guess that the Sharingan allows the user to watch their opponent's chakra flow and then induce an identical flow through the user's own body. All he needed was for someone to show him a proper Rasengan, and then he'd be able to copy it easily. He couldn't copy mine because I used the Kage Bunshin to stabilize my Rasengan. If I were to bet, I'd place my money on Kakashi showing Sasuke the Rasengan. The lazy bastard would probably think it'd be a way to remember me as a teammate. Do you hate them? Naruto chuckled, causing Tenten to look over at him. What's so funny? I want to hate them. I want to spit in their face and swear at them. I want to hate them so much, but I just can't do it. But they had you executed. You have every right to hate them. Tenten, I've been hanged, burned, stabbed and poisoned many times before. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was thanks to the stupid fox that I'm still alive today. Tenten looked over and saw tears starting to form in Naruto's eyes. She slowly wrapped her arms around the blonde. Naruto, it's okay to be upset. Just let it out. The two slowly sank to the ground as Naruto relaxed into Tenten's embrace. It hurts so much, Tenten. To see something that you worked so hard for thrown right back in your face so easily cuts deeply. At that moment, I wanted to kill him, the person that I had once considered a good friend. Naruto, it's alright. It's perfectly normal for you to feel this way. You didn't deserve to be treated the way you did, but you still stayed strong. You really are an incredible person, Naruto. I'm glad I've gotten to know you. The two sat there in silence for a while, with Tenten's arms still around Naruto. After a moment, Tenten peeked around to take a look at Naruto. He's fallen asleep, huh? Can't help it, I guess. Tenten closed her eyes herself, allowing Naruto's warmth to permeate through her body. She barely noticed as she slowly fell asleep herself. Moments later, Tsunade was walking back to her office, giggling and cradling a camera. I've finally got some good blackmail on the brat. He's never going to live this one down. Meanwhile in Otogakure, Orochimaru was curled on a bed, screaming in pain. The wound caused by Naruto's strange jutsu wasn't healing, in spite of all of Kabuto's efforts. Out of nowhere, he heard a deep voice speak. Having trouble with that wound of yours? Who's there? A friend. I can grant you the power to get rid of the brat, all you have to do is ask. Very well. In Tenten's mind, a different situation was taking place. She looked around the pure white surroundings, but failed to see anything that would tell her where she was. A voice broke through the void, causing Tenten to turn towards the source. Tenten-chan, it's nice to finally meet you. Huh, who the hell are you? Ah, I failed to properly introduce myself. I am